Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. So today we've broadly speaking got three topics to talk about. The Legion beta, which is coming very soon, legacy servers, leveling, and one or two little bits of housekeeping. This all comes from a developer event that Blizzard did as of the time that you see this video yesterday, in which they basically gave a once-over of what's going on in Legion. It was an interview format with Associate Game Director Ian Hazzikostas and then with Jesse Cox hosting. They covered a number of topics, including quite a lot about Legion itself. However, that's really nothing new if you've watched my videos recently. I think their point was to get a wider number of people up to speed. Broadly speaking, Ian did a good job of acknowledging problems with garrisons, Draenor daily quests, dungeons, and talked about how they think that the Legion stuff is going to avoid those problems while delivering some benefits. That was pretty much the stick of the whole thing. If you want to check out what he specifically said, well, just hit up MMO Champion and you'll see a list of bullet points, or you can of course watch the VOD. Now, let's get on to the stuff that you're probably here to hear about, and we're going to start off with the beta talk. So, the beta is coming out this Thursday. Functionally, what does the beta mean? Well, within the games industry, the meaning of a beta has really shifted a lot. This is something that Ian himself actually talked about. With World of Warcraft, we have always got the beta for the expansion in a state where it's in active development, and it's indeed something the developers do seem to use quite a lot. Whereas, if you're playing the beta test of, like, I don't know, Call of Duty or whatever, some game, that's generally a very polished product. Indeed, looking at the beta test for Overwatch, while there is a lot of, has been a lot of testing, it was a very polished experience. Basically, they said, we're going to do beta in November, and they did, I believe they did the alpha in November, and really that's just a difference in naming in order to manage expectations. Whenever the alpha came out, there was obviously like a third of the specs, not all the content was in. Well, now we're at the stage where every single spec is in Legion. Most of them have had quite a few iterations, so they're a bit more sort of applicable for wider testing. And additionally, we have a lot more content, so every single zone is in the game. I assume pretty much in the state that it's going to ship. We've got the world quest system, we've got the dungeons, the mythic dungeons, the mythic plus dungeons. All the major bits of content are pretty much there. So now they're going to call it the beta test and use that to send out a really big wave of invites. So good luck, check your email on Thursday, maybe you'll get in. And one of the reasons why they're doing all of that is because they want to see a broader level of feedback from people. So when you're doing a test and you're expanding it out to more people, you're actually going to get, you get like a lower quality individual feedback because there's just so many voices. But what you do get is some really, really useful stuff on like players' behavior, and you get to stress test your servers. So they're not doing any character copies initially, so you will have to start off from level 100. I think the idea is that when it's alpha and when there's less people, because individuals are a little bit louder, I think that can be quite good for if you've got a small, dedicated, but quite communicative group of people testing. That can be quite good for nailing down the really big major problems, and then you're at the stage where you can just open up the floodgates and get the broader feedback on how good the content is. So that's what's going on Thursday. There's not that much else to talk about it. Certainly there's a lot of stuff there if you want to test it. However, unless, you're maybe part of a raiding guild, or you really want to get a leg up on everyone else with Legion, you're grand just to not go into the beta. Indeed, I think you'll have a better time of the expansion if you experience it all fresh whenever the expansion itself comes out on the 30th of August. Let's move on to legacy servers. So, first of all, he said that the World of Warcraft development team is focusing on Legion, and that the stuff about legacy servers is more of a company-wide issue that's above his pay grade, and I think it probably is above his pay grade. He's there to be a game designer, not to make decisions that involve the balance books of the company. There's probably some sort of team or division, whatever, lead, who is going to be a bit more involved with that. Maybe J. Allen Brack will be chatting to Mike Morheim, and that'll lead somewhere, but that's not really his discussion. So when he's talking about legacy servers, he's talking about the team's perspective. Now, what he did say really interested him was people's response to the pristine servers. Basically, Blizzard said that the team had been knocking around the idea of pristine servers where you knock or you turn off cross-realm zones, level boosts, all those different things, LFG, etc. And what he found to be the most interesting bit of feedback was people saying, what's the point of having this closed-off realm with all the convenience things removed if you're just going to hit max level in a few days and be stuck there sitting in your garrison, because the leveling isn't really the leveling that a lot of people get that kind of nostalgia for. One of the things that Nostalrius even, really sort of brought back for a lot of people. So, Ian said this addressed a wider problem in the game that goes past the legacy server, pristine server, whatever debate. He said that the level up experience right now is, and this is a quote, pretty broken, and another quote, way too easy. He also said that past the actual difficulty, pacing is a really big issue, and basically, you out-level zones, all that stuff's pretty bad. And he even went as far to just flat out say, you start off a new Night Elf Hunter, you're one-shotting stuff, you're two-shotting stuff, there's not really much gameplay there. And a part of the pacing, which is something that is worth thinking about, is that the time spent fighting mobs versus the time spent running from place to place is really out of whack. So a lot of your leveling up is just running from quest place to quest place, because realistically, when you find a pack of mobs, you one-shot them, you two-shot them, and they're pretty much all gone. So he said that the pacing of the game right now is not where it should be, and he flat out said that with the team focusing quite a lot on, on essentially the end game, the max level content, serious deficiencies have really surfaced in the game's level up content. Now, he did say that they're looking into fixing this, including via hotfixes. He said that they aim for combat to be about 12 to 15 seconds at max level when you're fighting a regular mob in the world, but he knows that's a little bit too long for a character that's got hardly any abilities, but still, they do want combat to be a bit more slow when it comes to leveling, and I think that's actually a really good thing. I recently started leveling a Shadow Priest. I haven't touched it in 3 weeks, but I'm going to count that as recent, and I did it using only cloth gear. It's not Iron Man, because there were points where I, was not cloth gear, white gear. Not really an Iron Man run, but, just doing it because I thought it would be more fun, and indeed, with more risk and slower combat times, it was a far more engaging experience where I actually felt like I was playing a game, and that was definitely something that was quite interesting to me. Now, Ian went on to say that around Cataclysm and Mists of Pandaria, they had this problem where they weren't satisfied by the daunting amount of levels a new player had to get through in order to get to the newer content. So, if I say, hello friend, do you want to play World of Warcraft? And they say, oh shit, there's 90 levels, and Pandaria takes ages to level through. This is before it was completely nerfed to the ground, and yeah, you could finish it before you finish, or leave Jade Forest, but, when that was all a little bit slower, and even back in expansions before that, it was a bit daunting to people. So, in response to that, what the dev team did is they just made leveling faster and faster and faster, to the point where you outlevel zones, and a whole bunch of problems happen. He said that the character boost solves this problem, meaning that there is less of a need to rush people through the leveling experience. Now, I do agree with him, right? If you really want to hit max level, yup, the boost solves that problem, and if expansion comes with a boost, and you're getting a friend into the game, they can boost up. That said, it's maybe not the nicest solution to that problem. Obviously, there's the monetary angle here, where it's not a gameplay design solution to the problem, it's a purchase your way around the problem solution to the problem. So what they should maybe do is think about this problem and think, right, how do we game design around this? Perhaps if you hit a max level or you hit max level, you can find some way of starting off a new character at level 60 or something like that. Maybe they could keep the overall time to hit max level slow, but as an example, make it so that you can choose between either Outland or Northrend as your, experience from, covering, say, a lot more than just 10 levels. So if you were to start at level 60 and just say, I want to do Outland, and then you do Outland, and after that's done, you're level 90 or you're level 85, so that they, essentially make that content pristine and still feel paced correctly, but cover a far larger level bracket. They could do game design solutions to this problem, so maybe it's a little bit unfortunate that they're like, yeah, there's a boost, so we don't need to fix that problem. That said, he went on to say that with the boost, air quotes, fixing that, there is no need to rush people through the leveling zones anymore, and that there's no reason why you shouldn't be, or why you should be out-leveling a zone before you've actually finished, and all of those various problems. So, he said that they are talking internally about ways they can solve this. Earlier, he talked about hotfixes perhaps being applied to fix up that experience, and he also said that there is promise in the Legion scaling, that they could essentially use that to give zones a broader level bracket to help keep that content relevant. So, yeah, maybe if you're a few levels higher than the Hillsbrad Foothills, like normal level requirement, maybe it could scale so that the mobs and the content is actually relevant to, as far as difficulty goes. It's great to see them talk about that. Of course, it is also worth mentioning, and I need to be fair and balanced here, that in a way, he was kind of like, yes, so now that you can buy a way to skip leveling, we can make leveling longer. I think that's a slightly cynical way to go about it, but there's definitely a nugget of truth in it. If leveling is longer, then perhaps more people are going to purchase the boost, and from a financial, bottom line perspective, that's something Blizzard probably likes. They've stopped reporting subscriber numbers. They care more about sort of engagement metrics and the amount of money that people are literally pumping into the game rather than how many people are actually playing the game. So, there's maybe something to worry about there. I overall think that what they should do is take a game design sort of first approach to solving this leveling problem. But what I will say is all the stuff he talked about here, on face value, I did like. So if they were to go back and fix up those leveling zones and do stuff to make them be proper good bits of content, then I'm absolutely happy about that. He was pretty honest in saying that he doesn't think it's a very good experience, that there's major problems, and that as the team has tunneled into developing max level content, big deficiencies have surfaced in their level up game, and he basically said the game should feel epic all the time, and right now it doesn't feel epic while you're leveling up, and that's a big problem. Now that I think about it, I actually, and I still have the script lying around somewhere, I did a video script that I never really produced, maybe a month ago, about leveling and how I would fix it up. And essentially my rough plan, I'll dole it out here, and I'll do the proper video actually now that he's brought up the topic and sort of brought that into the community's discussion. But essentially, it was the idea that when you're creating a character, after you've made your visually you've made your character, you kind of get a little bit of an RP sequence with some cinematics and things that you get to fill in, a little bit like how you fill in a backstory for your character in a role-playing game, or even Guild Wars 2 does a light version of that. But essentially, through that system, it could suggest, okay, you're going to level up in Northrend, and then your character would start off on the boat to Northrend. All the cinematics and the backstory building that you do beforehand, that gives you the context for why you're in Northrend, and then you just play through Northrend almost at its original duration, so that you just get to do the full thing. And you could choose Outland. I know some people would call you crazy for choosing Outland, but that would be one way to make it such that an expansion's level up content could cover most of the leveling that a character would need to do in such a way that it's not compromised as far as its quality is, and because right now you out-level zones and all that stuff happens. I think that could be an interesting way of doing things, and it could mean that you could perhaps level up 4 or 5 alts to max level, or to near enough max level, and for most of your leveling, most of your leveling time, you'd be doing unique content every time that one of your other characters didn't do. That could be really cool. Another way of doing things, something like what Guild Wars does, where they do some sort of clever stuff with scaling such that you can really use a lot of the world. Who knows? I think it's a really important topic though, because one of the biggest problems with World of Warcraft, in my view, is that the new player experience sucks. I think it's a lot worse than the majority of the competition out there, and I think that really is something that will hurt World of Warcraft as far as its subscriber numbers and long-term growth goes. Right now, they're at the state where they can get around the problem by giving you a free character boost, but let's be real, there are problems in just suddenly being level 100 and not having had the benefit of having a progression to actually get there. So I'm really keen to see how they go with all that stuff. I know I'm rambling on a little bit here, but hey, it's one of those videos, right? We can sort of be a little bit more chilled out about it. Now, that's essentially all that I wanted to cover here. So we talked a little bit about the legacy servers. Again, above Ian's pay grade. I do believe him when he says that. You don't hire a game designer to, deal with your company's finances and stuff. You hire them to design the game. That's kind of how that stuff goes, so I do believe he's talking at face value there. So a little bit about the legacy servers. Very good discussion about the leveling, and then, of course, the beta is coming. So if you really want the beta test, then I wish you the best of luck. There's certainly some pretty cool stuff to be seen and lots of testing to be done, and that is, again, on Thursday. Anyway, that's it for me. Thank you for watching this more chilled out podcasty video, and I will see you next time.